What's up, everybody, and welcome to the Rebel Rave. I'm Rob.
I'm Dave, and today we're gonna rank the 9 Star Wars theatrical films.
That's right, but before we do that, if you have not done so yet, please make sure to hit the subscribe button for this channel and hit that little bell so you can get notifications whenever we do a new video.
And feel free to follow the Rebel Rave on Instagram and Twitter, right here, at the Rebel Rave.
All right, let's get into this, Dave. 9 theatrical movies, and we're gonna tell you guys what our favorites are from 1st to 9th place.
The way we did this was Rob and I each did our separate lists, and then I kind of combined them in a weighted average. The interesting thing about it, I think, is that we both agreed on the #1 film, which we'll get to, and we both agreed on the bottom 3 films.
Which we think you guys will too.
Yeah, but the middle was completely different. So here's the average, the Rebel Rave ranking of the 9 Star Wars films.
Let's do this.
We'll start with number 9.
Attack of the Clones.
I have a love-hate relationship with this movie because I think there's a really solid film in there if you cut out a lot of the cheesy romance stuff that doesn't work. If George had just given Hayden and Natalie a bit more direction in terms of the acting and dialogue, there's some really solid stuff, there's some great fun Star Wars action, but it just doesn't all come together for me.
I agree. I will say the worst part of Attack of the Clones, mind you, I did enjoy the movie, but the worst part would be the cheesy love scenes that kept on interrupting the interesting stuff in the movie. It kind of drove me nuts.
Yeah.
So it's definitely, in my opinion, the worst Star Wars movie, but it's not a bad Star Wars movie.
Correct. I think it's great. Detective Obi-Wan's fun.
And to me, the Battle of Geonosis was pretty cool, seeing all those lightsabers, and NSYNC was in that movie. And that takes us to number 8.
The Phantom Menace.
So The Phantom Menace actually holds a very special place in our heart because it is the first Star Wars movie that we saw in theaters when it was first released, right? So it was a great movie. Now, it's got all those flaws that the prequels tend to have. You know, it's got some of the cheesy stuff like Jar Jar Binks and his whole little goofy language and all that stuff. Yes, Jake Lloyd's acting was not the best, but then again, he's a kid. You can't blame him. The guy retired from acting from all the hate he got from that.
Jake Lloyd doesn't deserve the hate. That was more on George's script. That kid did as great of a job as he could with the dialogue he was given.
There you go. But there are a lot of things that I did like about the movie. Some people make fun of this, but I actually did enjoy the pod racing. I remember when that movie, after I saw that movie, I went and I got the Star Wars pod racing video game, and I played that thing until my thumbs were numb.
Absolutely.
That game was incredible. I love that game. So, you know, The Phantom Menace, the soundtrack, Duel of the Fates, is one of the greatest Star Wars songs in history. So I think it gave us a lot of great things, but it does have some negative stuff also.
I agree. One thing about Phantom Menace I think is a great positive is I feel like it feels the most like the original trilogy in terms of the sets and the worlds that we visit. There's something a little more physical about it. They built a lot of models for that. They went to a lot of physical locations, which is cool. I agree, I dig the pod racing scene. In the theatrical cut, it was shorter and I think more effective. On the home video releases, George kept extending it and adding more with the background racers and such. I think that might have been a mistake. And yeah, Duel of the Fates, especially that last scene with Obi-Wan and Maul after Qui-Gon dies, whew, spoiler alert, is amazing. So yeah, I think it's still solid. It's got its warts, like you said most of the prequels do, but it's still a solid entry.
Yes.
So now we're at number 7.
Revenge of the Sith.
Revenge of the Sith is my favorite of the prequels by far. That opening intro where Obi-Wan and Anakin are going towards the Invisible Hand and they rescue Chancellor Palpatine from there, all of that's great, except for like Dooku's little weird flip. That's kind of weird. And Obi-Wan getting crushed by that bridge is kind of weird.
And nothing happening to him?
Yeah, and he's totally fine, doesn't need a hip replacement. But R2's hilarious in this. Obi-Wan and Anakin are great.
He spits fire and flies.
Yeah, it's awesome. And I think that the movie's really solid. A couple things don't work for me. I think there's a couple things wonky about Anakin's turn. I do think the saber battle at the end got a little too flashy and calculated. But Ewan, especially at the end, kills it on the acting. Hayden really steps up his game during that final battle too. And I think the soundtrack is phenomenal, and I really dig it. It's a great entry.
Agreed. Revenge of the Sith, like Dave said, in my opinion, is the best of the prequels. It does have its cheesy moments. It does have just things that were just okay, like Dave said. But it has the point, in my opinion, at the point when Anakin turns Order 66 to the end of the movie, it's just all excitement from there. I enjoyed the Mustafar scene. I did think it was a little long, you know, but like you said, Ewan McGregor was an incredible Obi-Wan Kenobi, and in that movie in particular, I thought was his best performance as Obi-Wan Kenobi. It was a great movie.
If I could change one thing about it, I'd get rid of the weird lava bridge climbing and then the Crossfire. Remember Crossfire, the game from the 90s?
Challenge. Crossfire.
Oh yeah,
The weird crossfire scene where Obi-Wan and Anakin are floating on the lava lake.
Yeah, I forgot about that. All right, so we're done with the prequels. Those were clearly the last place ones. Now we're going to number 6.
The Last Jedi.
So, The Last Jedi actually ranked a little bit higher in my book than it did in Dave's book because I thought The Last Jedi was an incredible, incredible movie. Now, as you guys have seen on this channel, we do have some things that we kind of didn't like about the movie, but overall, we love the movie. I thought it was just a great way to completely just change the story on us. It made us think we were going in one direction and completely just threw us off the scent. The movie stays true to that saying, let the past die. I mean, this is the beginning of a whole new Star Wars era, which I love about The Last Jedi.
I really enjoy The Last Jedi too. To me, it's only behind the original trilogy and The Force Awakens. And the only reason why it's behind The Force Awakens is because it's not as feel-good as The Force Awakens. But I do think it's insanely emotional. I buy totally what happened with Luke and Ben during those 3 flashbacks, the kind of Rashomon reference that we see. I think the end battle at the end with Luke and the Force projection is great. And I can't even listen to the soundtrack, Peace and Purpose, the music playing over Luke's sacrifice at the end of that cliff on Ahch-To where he surrenders himself to the Force without getting emotional. That is one of my absolute favorite scenes in all of Star Wars. I think it also gave us one of the best action sequences with the throne room with Rey, Kylo against the guards. And I love the things that it did to divert from traditional Star Wars storytelling tropes. I still think it's fantastic. I'm really interested in where Episode 9 is going to go due to the sort of blank slate that Ryan left JJ. And again, it took me a little bit to come around to it, but I love it. Now, number 5,
Rogue One.
Rogue One, a Star Wars story. You know, we heard so many issues about this with reshoots and Tony Gilroy coming in to help Gareth Edwards. Look, whatever they did paid off because I think it is a fantastic Star Wars film. I think that last third of the movie is insanely well done. The Battle of Scarif, 100% for sure, is the best space battle we've seen in any Star Wars film.
Agreed.
A lot of people say we didn't get enough time to meet the characters and to learn about them and to grow to connect with them. Listen, I love them all, especially Jyn, Cassian, and Chirrut. I think they're insanely interesting Star Wars characters. I think the movie as a whole really fleshes out the universe while dealing with subject matter that's insanely intimate to the main story.
Agreed. I loved Rogue One. It was an incredible movie. And, you know, like Dave said, people did complain about, you know, these characters not having backstory, but let's be honest. We went into that movie knowing they were going to die. I mean, we were in the theater saying, if they don't die, we will be very upset. And so you don't really need a lot of backstory for characters that are just going to die. This is, remember, this is not a saga story. This is a side story that connects to the saga. I'll be honest with you. I went into this movie with not that high of expectations. I wasn't sure how it was going to measure up to the saga movies, and I was completely blown away. This Star Wars movie has left me with chills like no other Star Wars movie had, especially the ending.
How did I forget to talk about the ending?
The ending. The ending is, in my opinion, one of the greatest endings of a Star Wars movie. In fact, when the ending credits pulled up, Dave stood up and I snapped a picture of him and it looked like this. That's right. We were both in shock. We could not believe what we had just witnessed. The ending of Rogue One is by far, in my opinion, one of the best endings to a Star Wars movie. It's just incredible. And that brings us to number 4.
The Force Awakens.
The Force Awakens was the very first Star Wars movie that came back to theaters after how many years? It was like 2005?
1983 to 2015, 32 years.
32 years, and it was the first movie back in theaters. So we were obviously very, very excited to see it. Now, J.J. Abrams directed this movie, and I honestly believe he did not disappoint. It was a great movie. The way Dave describes this is he says it is a fun movie, and it truly, truly is a fun movie. They really make you fall in love with the characters. I think, you know, the way they tell their stories. It does have a little bit of cliffhangers that we don't really get answers to in The Last Jedi, but maybe we'll get them soon. But I really did enjoy The Force Awakens a lot.
Like Rob was alluding to, I always say that The Force Awakens isn't the best Star Wars movie, but it is the most fun. Right from the beginning. The movie is a breakneck pace. There's just action beat after action beat and fun little nostalgia tick without being too nostalgic, without leaning too much on history. I think the characters are all incredibly engaging. It really made me invested in Rey, Finn, Poe, and Kylo's stories leading up into The Last Jedi. It also has maybe one of my favorite, at least the most beautifully shot lightsaber battle between Finn and Kylo and then Rey and Kylo at the end. It's fantastic. All right, top 3, only the original trilogies left, and we're gonna start with
A New Hope.
So we've got A New Hope as number 3 in our average rating. I had it as number 2 in my personal. I think it's, I mean, what can you say? It is the classic. It's the film that kicked everything off. It introduces and world builds like so many cool concepts and characters. It really just builds this galaxy out and just sucks you in and just makes you want to learn everything about it and go on adventures in it. Again, just so many fantastic concepts introduced, groundbreaking visuals, effects, and storytelling concepts. It has such a dear place to my heart, and I absolutely love this movie.
Dave, you know, my list is always changing. It's always morphing, as I'm sure yours is too. A New Hope at one point was probably number 2, number 1, number 3. It always moves. But like you said, A New Hope will always be the movie that kicked everything off. The movie that started everything. It was the first Star Wars movie I ever saw in my life. I saw it in 1997 when my parents surprised me and took me to the movies for my birthday to watch it.
I didn't know that. That's cool.
Yeah, it was a birthday party and they took me with all my friends. It was incredible.
Aww.
And that's when I fell in love with Star Wars, and you know, so A New Hope has a very special place in my heart. That was the movie that had me falling in love with Star Wars action figures, and I would go to the store all the time, back when like in the supermarket, in the grocery store, they had Star Wars toys, you know, little orange packaged ones and green packaged ones.
And the Power of the Force.
Yes, and I used to beg my parents to please buy me one, and they were like $6 at the time or something like that. So A New Hope obviously has a very special place in my heart. Which brings us to number 2.
Return of the Jedi.
Oh yeah. So Return of the Jedi is number 2 on our list of top Star Wars movies, and you know, for me, Return of the Jedi, for some reason, I just have the most vivid memories as a kid of watching Return of the Jedi. You know, the different scenes from the Battle of Endor to, you know, the crazy aliens dancing in Jabba's palace, and Han Solo and Carbonite coming out of the Carbonite, and just the Rancor pit, just all the stuff. You know, it brings back a lot of memories, and for some reason, I don't know why, it's not my favorite Star Wars movie, but as a kid, it's the one that's the most vivid. It really stuck with me a lot. I also thought it was a great way to wrap up the whole story of Anakin Skywalker and Luke. You know, we got to see him as a true hero, you know, show that his father does have a good side.
Rob, I think you really hit the nail on the head. Return of the Jedi is the film that connected with me most as a child. I don't know what it was about it. I thought the sail barge scene with Luke catching that lightsaber from R2 was so awesome. I thought the battle with Vader was super emotional. And then Return of the Jedi, cover your ears, kiddies. Luke is just a badass. Like, he just walks in, he's force choking Gamorrean guards. He doesn't even have his lightsaber on him when he's going to take on Jabba and his palace full of thugs, right? He knows what he's doing, he's confident, he's reached like peak Jedi Knight at that point. Peak incorruptible Jedi Knight. And that really just sells the movie for me. One change I would make, man, I wish they would have gone with Wookiees instead of Ewoks like the original script.
Oh, that would have been cool.
That would have been so much better. But the Ewoks are still fine.
One change I would have made, give us a backstory on Palpatine. You can't just kill him.
Oh,
come
gosh,
on.
No.
That was a Snoke joke, guys. That was a Snoke
joke. Which leads us finally to our number 1 Star Wars film.
Drum roll, please.
Empire Strikes Back.
Okay, so it's no surprise. The Empire Strikes Back is most Star Wars fans' favorite Star Wars film, but it's for great reason. It's such an emotional film. It gets us a great romance and story with Han and Leia, and of course the iconic "I love you"
I know
moment, and it takes Luke's story from him being such an ace pilot on Hoth to learning with Yoda and kind of being put in his place, and then so eagerly going after Vader and coming to that infamous moment of "No, I am your father." It's just incredible. It lands on a very similar point to The Last Jedi, where a lot of emotional stuff has happened. We don't have a lot of resolution. We're not sure where it's going after that. And I think that's one of the reasons in hindsight why The Last Jedi will be looked at better, and in fact as almost even more parallel to The Empire Strikes Back, even though their stories aren't exactly similar.
I've struggled a lot throughout the years with saying that The Empire Strikes Back is my favorite Star Wars movie because everyone says that The Empire Strikes Back is their favorite movie, and I don't want to be like a bandwagon that just says that it's my favorite because everyone else says it's their favorite, you know. But you know, every time I try to categorize these movies and rank them, Empire Strikes Back always ends up as number 1 because to me it is the most well-rounded movie.
Yes,
you know,
absolutely.
it has the best of everything Star Wars has to offer. You know, it introduces us to Yoda. It introduces us to Boba Fett, which is a really popular character. I personally think he's overrated, but it introduces us to Boba Fett. It introduces us to Lando Calrissian, which we're gonna see very soon in May, which I'm so excited about. So it's just such a well-rounded movie. I will say, when I was a kid and I saw that movie in theaters, when the movie ended, I was very upset. I was like in shock. I said, how can a movie leave you like on such a cliffhanger and just end. But it just perfectly set up the Return of the Jedi, which ended up just concluding everything beautifully, which is why I'm so excited about episode 9.
All right, so that's our Rebel Rave ranking of the 9 Star Wars films.
Now we want to know what your ranking is. Let us know what your number 1 is, what your number 9 is. We won't judge you if your number 1 is Attack of the Clones. We promise you.
Maybe. Maybe we will.
Maybe just a little bit.
So comment, share, subscribe, all that jazz, and may the Force be with you.
See you in the next video.